everybody. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited. It was I hope you all had a wonderful vacation. I really did, and I'm so excited to be here. I think that there's no better way to start your morning. Well, your morning's probably started already now that it's 11 o'clock, than learning about Eretz Yisrael and being brought here. I know I cannot wait till people could come in again. And if you can't come in physically, then I hope to bring you here virtually. I'm going to share my screen with you. If you go to Ben Gurion Airport today, this is what you would see. Empty halls, not really flying. The government of Israel just extended another 2 weeks the closure of the airport only for emergencies to let people in and out. I was saying earlier that they came up with this list of who could come, and it's so of like when you're allowed in, and it's you have to do this, you have to do that. I'm like, okay, bottom line, I'm just staying put. I'm not leaving Israel. It's too hard to get back in. So this is what it would look like. However, nowadays is not the only time when Ben Gurion looked like this, and there was a huge drop in tourism. When else did this happen? In 1980, there was a huge decline in tourism and people were not coming to Israel. What happened in 1980? In 1980, there was this law passed known as the Jerusalem Law, or Chok Yerushalayim. And this law stated that the official capital of the country of Israel is Jerusalem. It's going to be the house of the Knesset, of the president, of the government. Jerusalem is the center. Israel is recognizing our own capital. And as a reaction to this Jerusalem law, what happened? All of the embassies that were in Jerusalem moved. Let's get out of here. They didn't want any part in being in Jerusalem. And tourism dropped. People are not coming anymore. Now, what should the government response be to this? They declared Jerusalem now a capital. There's a drop in tourism, and now they need to respond. So the response of the government of the time was, I think we should retell the story, and it should re-inspire us because I absolutely love it. The mayor of Jerusalem at the time, his name was Teddy Kalik, and he said, how could we bring more people to Israel, and specifically to Jerusalem? In the world, there was something known as the International Rose Competition. And in order for a country to host the Rose Competition, they had to meet specific criteria. Jerusalem met all of the criteria. You have to have enough space for all the different countries to come. The weather has to be a certain type. And now the question is, Jerusalem meets the criteria. Does the world want to host the competition here? Because we weren't really going to Jerusalem. And the committee decided that they do want to host it in Israel. And all the countries came to Israel. Everyone had their corner and planted flowers. Now, one of the beautiful things about it, so Jerusalem is chosen, is that rose species from all over the world were brought to Jerusalem. And because of that, if you go to the Rose Garden today, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it as the class continues, at any season in the year, fall, winter, spring, summer, you can see roses because there's so many different species that you always see flowers blooming. So it's really a gorgeous place to be. And the question I want to focus on today, I opened with Corona in the airport, but I want to speak nothing about Corona. I want to take us away from the ice and the snow and cold to something beautiful topic, something we like looking at, smelling, and I want to ask, how can we enrich our lives by focusing on beauty? That's the question I want to focus on, and there's 3 specific points I'm going to focus on. One is the Rose Garden of Jerusalem, which I mentioned a minute ago. So I want to ask who founded it and a little bit more about that. The second point I want to focus on is when and what was the Flowers Project. And the third is what is Darom Adom. So all of these points are going to help us answer the larger question. Okay. Maurice and Vivian Wall. In 1917, there was a British man named Maurice who was born, and he grew up and he became a property investor. And Vivian was an assistant in his office at a point. One day, Maurice and Vivian walking down the street of London, and Maurice saw a beggar, and he gave the beggar a coin. And Vivian saw that, and she told Maurice, can you please give more money? And that caught his eye, and he decided that Vivian was the woman he wanted to marry. Maurice and Vivian Wall, the Rose Garden is named after them because they gave a huge donation to the cause, and you can find their name in a lot of different buildings and parks around Jerusalem and in England. He was a huge philanthropist, money to Jewish causes. And one of the things, so he was a really honest man, and you would ask yourself, if he's so honest, then why is his name all over the place? And the way he said is, I want people to know that I'm giving, and that giving is important. And he didn't see it as, oh, look how great I am, my name is all over the place. He really wanted to promote giving. Now, if you notice in this picture to the left, they're a little bit younger. They're standing in front of Yeshivat HaKotel. They're younger. I didn't mean to say they're younger. I mean, they are younger. But Vivian is by Maurice's side, and in this picture too. If you Google Maurice and Vivian, picture that you'll find, she's by his side. And Maurice would not give a donation unless his wife agreed first. And they were really a partnership. Now, the name might sound familiar to you. Okay, I'll tell you why it might sound familiar in a second. Here are some pictures of the Jerusalem Rose Garden. You see how gorgeous it is, all the different colored roses, there's water, kids jump in. The bay. The name might sound familiar to you if you read Rabbi Sachs, Alav Shalom's papers, with thanks to the Maurice Wall Charitable Foundation. I remember one day I was in the Rose Garden, all of a sudden I said, hey, I wonder if it's the same people that promote Rabbi Sachs's paper. So they're Maurice and Vivian Wall, their legacy now, he died in 2007, she died in 2005, so they have this legacy that continues it on. So as you go and visit the Rose Garden, even just seeing their name, it's inspirational to hear their story and how much they give. And I hope I could give as much as they do. Now, here's another picture from the Rose Garden. You look at it, you see how beautiful it is. It reminds me of my grandma's deal house. Now, Maurice and Vivian Wall, in giving a donation to this garden, helping it open, not only are they promoting tourism in Jerusalem and flowers and beauty and great smells, they're also promoting marriages. And I have gone on at least 4 dates with 4 different guys that I could think of. If you go to this park, you'll be guaranteed to see people on a date, and like religious couples always sit on the bench, like benches. I had this thing, I never wanted to sit on a bench because it's like typical for like religious couples to sit on a bench. So anyway, I've been on many dates in this garden. Some good, some not so good. I will say that my 3rd date with my husband was in this garden. We were sitting on the grass, not a bench. And that's where he decided after that date that he wanted to get married, but he didn't tell me until later. And then when 6 weeks later, my husband told me that he did want to get married, we were in a restaurant. And then after, we came back to the garden. So the Rose Garden has a lot of great association to me, and I want to thank Maurice and Vivian Wall, Adam Shalom, for funding it and bringing beauty to Yerushalayim. Now, when you come to Jerusalem and you spend time with your family, you have lunch in the park, and you walk around and you enjoy the roses and there's bathrooms there, you could then take a visit to Menorat HaKnesset, which is right nearby. Behind this gate is the Rose Garden. And I gave them an extensive zoom on the menorah. You can Google Del Shabbat menorah to find it. You could spend 20 minutes in front of it. You could spend half a day just being in the garden and looking at the menorah, and then you could get a tour of the Knesset. So I already just planned the whole day for you when you come with your families. Now, I want to ask you, how would you build, I'm going to change topics a little bit. It's the general topic is connected. How would you build the connection to America for Americans that don't live here? Let's say that's the task that someone in the government comes up to you and asks you what you would want to do. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about it. How do you build a connection? And now I want to tell you that this question was asked in the 1950s for the exact opposite about Israel. The government asked themselves, how can we increase the Jews of the exiles' connection to Israel? And what they came up with was so creative. I would never come up with it, and it was a wonderful idea, and I want to share it with you because it will increase the beauty and happiness in our lives. They had something in 1951 called the Flowers Project in honor of Yom Ha'atzmaut. They said, what we want to do is we want to have the children of Israel, and it's great that they're getting the children involved because usually adults are always running the show. We want them to go into the fields and pick a flower. Then we want them to dry the flower, and they gave instructions. They said you could put it under heavy books. There were other methods of drying the flowers. And then we want you to take a postcard, glue the flower on, write your name, your age, where you're from, where the flower was picked, and send it to a child in Chutz La'aretz that doesn't live here. And they made these colorful, beautiful posters, and the schools were all involved in it, and the Ministry of Education, who was behind this project, one of the people behind the project, they would write to the schools, if you have extra postcards, please send them back, because we don't want a single postcard to get wasted. And this was the project that was going on. Now, I want to speak about some of the amazing benefits and how great this idea is. One, sending a flower. Imagine you're a child that lives in America and you get a flower from the land of Israel. One, you're getting something from the actual land. And what greater connection from the land than to get something from the land. It has an element of holiness to it because it's from the land of Israel. Builds the connection and the love. If you feel more connected to the land, naturally things you feel more connected to, you love the land more. It was upgrade from dirt that was sent in the past. What do I mean by that? There was a tradition that people would send dirt of Israel to outside of Israel if someone was being buried and they wanted to be buried from the dirt of Israel. So that was a concept. And now we're sending actual flowers. And it's beautiful. Who doesn't love getting flowers? Did you ever get flowers and say, oh no, why I get flowers? Other than when people say, oh, it's not necessary, you shouldn't have. You get flowers, you're happy, they're beautiful. So this is what's being sent. And you have someone from Israel sending you something. And connecting the people to the flowers and trees of Israel, instilling in them a love of land was of utmost importance. Now, who is this for? Well, we have on one hand the element of connecting the Jews outside of Israel to Israel, but on par with that was the actual children of Israel themselves. The government, the education system wanted the children to be connected, and it was a huge educational goal. We have goals, learn math, learn science, learn history. One of the goals for them, love the land of Israel. And this was one of the ways that they found, and they would publish books and pictures to get people to love the land. And in learning about this project, one of the questions I asked myself is, what would our education look like if we knew about New York's trees and flowers? I'm embarrassed to say, I could probably name one tree that grows in Brooklyn. I don't know names of trees and I don't know names of flowers. I'm not very connected to nature. And it's something that's really glaring because when you come to Israel, I actually learned a lot about flowers from little kids. You go with little kids on a walk. Oh, that's zechardal, like they sit and point at all the trees and they know it from little kids. Why do you know that? I don't know that. And they're much more connected to the land, and think about what it means in your life to be more connected to the land, what it means about your love of the country. So I would recommend, if you are interested in connecting to any place that you live in, learn about it and learn about what grows there, learn about the trees and the flowers. So the directions I already went over of how to send the flower. Now, this was a competition, and what were the rules? So all the kids and all the schools, they were sending flowers, and they were sending it. They want to build a connection to the children outside, but it also has to be done in a certain way. So the government, the education ministry, they were very clear that the number of flowers is not significant. What counts is the presentation. The postcard can't be ripped, dirty, or crinkled. And think of the values they're giving the kids, telling them you need to send something beautiful. So those were the rules. And if it's a competition, that means there's prizes. And here's some postcards that came out from then. You see really cute posters. They did in English and in Hebrew. You see this little girl, she's holding flowers. And I want you to notice these red flowers. Keep them in mind because we're going to talk about later. It's significant. And she has a postcard and she's sending it off. A flower for you. You see a flower to put on with Yisrael on the bottom. And how would you feel if you got a postcard like that? First of all, I know if I even get mail, I jump for joy. Mail that's not a bill or an annoying thing from the bank. If they get a letter from someone, especially a letter with a flower, especially a letter with a flower from Israel, that's huge. And it was drawn in a certain way that it wasn't this crinkled, ugly thing when it came. So I think, what a wonderful project. And it was a huge source of national pride that all the children, the whole country is being connected. Everyone's involved. The parents and the teachers are going with the kids to the field to pick the flowers, and to connect the nation on such a way, on something so beautiful like flowers. It connects. It reminds me back of what Teddy Kalich's idea was. Let's get people to come to Jerusalem for something positive. For flowers, what a better reason than that? And here again, using flowers to connect the nation. And I asked myself, is it time for another national project? I think it really is a national project in Israel, a world national project. I mentioned this in another Zoom because I always think about it. If you remember a few years ago, they had this ice bucket challenge where you had to take freezing cold ice water and dump it on someone else. And then say you've been nominated and then someone else does it. And the whole world was doing it. Imagine we can have something like that in a positive way. I think it would get the whole world off of Corona. I've been getting to my mail something, I know the SCI is talking about it a lot, something called the Israel Summit, which has all these different companies of Israel, and they're talking about their companies and the product. And I think it's such a great idea, because let's talk about Israel and the pride of it and what's going on here, and not Corona, and what we focus on, that's what grows. So this was a wonderful, wonderful project. And okay, going back to what I was saying before about it being a competition, there were 100 prizes given and then top 5. So I wanted to say what the top 5 were. They matched the purpose of the competition. Now, sometimes you can have a competition. Let's say in school, a lot of times they have competitions for people to study Mishnayot. And the prize could be whoever studies the most Mishnayot, they get an Xbox or something. So that's not really necessarily so connected. I don't know if schools really would offer that, but I'm just throwing it as an example. Here they matched. We have, to remind us, we have a competition, sending flowers, and you need to know the name of the flower and where it's from, and you need to send it to someone. What would kids like that want as a prize? Books. So they got books from the writings of Bialik, who in Fatash High School, I know, at least because I went there, we learn his writing still, and of Herzl, and of course the children want books and books connected to national pride. And other secondary prizes were going on nice hikes throughout the land. Something else I want to mention with prizes matching the purpose of the competition. Joey Mizrahi has in Bet Torah this father-son minyan. And my brothers, when they were younger, they used to go. And one of the things I think is so incredible about his minyan is the prizes that he gives. So kids love going to shul, they love getting prizes. And usually in shul, the prizes you win, and it's all great because everything the shuls do is great. So I'm going to say what the typical prizes and then what a Joey Miz prize was. Typical prizes are Nerf guns and toys, things that you could play with. What Joey Miz would give as prizes, first of all, the way he would do the raffle was incredible, is he would give out tickets to people, and normal raffles, you pick the ticket. If your number gets picked, you win the prize. So he wouldn't do that. If your number gets picked, then you have to answer the question on the card. Let's say he asked, what are Chamisha Chumshei Torah? And he would always ask a much more difficult one. So now, not only is the kid's getting picked and he's sitting and learning a new fact, and then when he's doing the raffle and doing a lot of prizes, the kids are learning all the questions that were picked. So they're getting educated. So that in itself, even the way he does the raffle is incredible. And what was the prizes? The prizes that Rabbi Joey Miz would give out to the boys were books, Sifrei Kodesh, Mishnayot, Chumashim, Tanachim. My brother Bert must have at least 100 books in the house just from the raffle. Now, the child at the time, he doesn't know the value of the book, but he kind of does, and he's excited and wants to win it. And then when you get older, you go to high school, you maybe study in Israel after, and you continue your Torah learning, then all of a sudden these books become valuable. And Joey said that he would just melt when he would see the kids, they would see what the books are. And sometimes you could tell when a book is more important. And he sees my brother, please, I hope I won the Mishnah. I hope I won the Mishnah. What's cuter than that? That's what the kid wants to win. And that's another live example of Joey connecting the prizes to what's going on. The people are in shul, they're praying, he's promoting, we're all promoting, we're educating to learn Torah, and here's a Chumash. So I think that's a really wonderful thing when we're able to match it. Now, this project, this flower project, is all nice and beautiful, sending postcards, connecting to Jews living outside of Israel, but, and there is a major, major but. The Nature Authority noticed that Israel's wildflowers were slowly disappearing. And there are a few reasons for that. First, I'm going to throw out a fun fact, which is incredible. In the tiny country of Israel, there are about 2,700 wildflowers, and 257 are protected species, which means you're not allowed to pick them, which is not a crazy number from 2,700, but it's still a lot. Now, I want to talk about what was this huge challenge, and we said the wildflowers are disappearing. Teachers would take their students on class trips. I typo there, not to sell flowers, to pick flowers. Class, let's go. Oh, you see the flowers in the field? Come pick them. And they were promoting picking the flowers. Families would go and hike with their kids and say, oh, pick flowers, let's go bring them home. And people have accounts that they're walking in the streets and they see piles of dumped flowers, because sometimes flowers don't even last the trip into the vase. So that you would just see these wild flowers that should be gorgeous in the field just dumped on the sides of the road. Songs were written by famous Israeli artists about picking flowers. You sit in the songs that all the kids are singing. They're singing about picking flowers, and that promotes picking the flowers. When people would come to Israel to visit and then go back home, flowers, dried flowers, but they come from the real ones, were given as souvenirs. Now, but the main reason why the flowers were disappearing was that they were sold in mass in shops. So what is the government going to do? And they just had this huge project of picking flowers. So it's a little bit ironic. We're sitting and picking the flowers, and now it's like, wait, no, we can't pick flowers anymore. And this project wasn't just 1 year, it went on for a good 10 years because it was so successful and so great. So now what do? We need to stop picking the flowers. How do you get all this to stop? So in 1964, there was a law passed and against picking certain wild flowers. There was a list. These are the flowers you can't pick. Great. Now you can have a law, but how do you enforce it? How do you enforce something where the cultural norm is so the opposite? So I'm going to tell you how they enforced it. And this was one of the most successful campaigns ever run. Flyers were printed in all the newspapers. Every time you look at the newspaper, you see flyers of flowers saying which ones you can't pick. They're hung up all over stores, gas stations. There were cute, catchy phrases used, which we're going to see in the next slide, that people remember not to pick the flowers. But ironically, the most effective action in stopping to pick the flowers was that the children in Gan, in preschool and kindergarten, learned you cannot pick the flowers, and they became the new guardians. And what better way to protect the flowers than start with the children? And over and over, we hear in society that the future is education. It's all about educating the kids. It's all about what the kids learn. And it really, really is. And if the kids are going on hikes with their families and people want to pick the flowers, the children say, no, you can't pick. And I will say, no, I'm going to save the sentence for later. So now all of a sudden the children are becoming the protectors. The teachers who once encouraged the children to pick are saying that. Now, one of the reasons why it worked, this campaign worked so well, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it, is, first of all, flowers are a beautiful thing. And when it's like, let's say, something the opposite, smoking. Don't smoke, it's bad for you. No one wants to see a picture of a cigarette. It's an ugly thing. But you have beautiful flowers. It catches your eye. Everyone loves flowers. So when it's something beautiful and positive, it's naturally going to be more effective. But you could also argue for the same reason, maybe people are all going to want to pick it because of how beautiful it was. But people are really just connected to it. And even in the way warnings were given for violators, because there were people that picked, there were people that still sold. So here's an example of some of the phrases. Al tiktefu atanu, you see the flower speaking, not to pick us. Al here, al titnu yad lashmidenu, don't give a hand to destroy us, as if the flower is speaking, which is really cute. This also is a great phrase. Sel anof ve'al tiktof. Go to the beauty, go to the views, go out, but don't pick the flower. And you see here the little boy's about to pick, and the older brother stops him, from 1970. Now I want to talk about the warnings. So people volunteered to be inspectors and make sure no one was picking, and they would give out warnings and give out fines. They said, we are warning you, you are not allowed to pick the flowers. And sometimes, let's say people were selling the flowers and they were violating the law, they would get warnings in the mail, not fines. And the warnings appealed to their moral side. It would say, you are seen selling flowers, The flowers are beautiful. We want everyone to enjoy it. And through education and convincing, that's how the campaign was won. Not through giving fines, not through forcing, not through violence. And it was really a wild success. And in the 80s and 90s, there were refresher campaigns to remind the people about not picking flowers. And here we see a beautiful flyer of all kinds of wildflowers in Israel. Asur liktofotam, you can't pick them, and what they look like. Now, what is the situation today in 2020? So 2017, 13 years ago, the Reshut HaTeva V'Haganim, Israel's Nature and Park Authority, they sent a survey out. They wanted to do research into today's people. How do they relate to wildflowers? So 80% of the people surveyed said they see other people picking flowers while they're out, and 47% admitted to doing it themselves. And they also asked them questions like, what names do you know of flowers? And the truth is, still till today, Israelis, even young ones, are able to pick flowers, but they wrote how many of each type was picked. Everyone picked the same 3 ones that everyone knows. Well, 3 is even better than 0, and like there's tons and tons. I mean, there's 200 and something. They were the popular ones, and I want to speak about the most popular flower that was picked because that brings me to the next point. When asked to name a wildflower, an overwhelming majority named the kalanit. This is a picture of a kalanit. So there is a very similar flower that's, I remember I was with a group once, and I don't know the names in English, so I Googled it, anemone. This is what this is called. There's a very similar one that's poppy, and like it looks almost exactly the same. So this flower everybody knows, and I told you to notice this red flower. We had it originally in the postcard. For example, you see the girl picking a red flower. Now, I just want to take a minute back to summarize what we did so far. So who founded the Rose Garden in Jerusalem? We spoke about. When and what was the Flowers Project? We spoke about it. And now the third point, which is connected to the red flower, is what is Darom Adom? So there is this festival. I want you to notice how beautiful this is. Look at all the field of red flowers, and red and green is such nice contrast and colors. Every year in the whole month of February, the beginning of March, sometimes the end of January, depending on the year, there's this mass migration down south to the northern Negev to see flowers. And I think it's so nice that it's part of Israelis culture that people are willing to drive 2 hours just to see a flower. You're not going to see a movie, you're not going to see a Broadway play, you're going to see a flower, and people are driving 2 hours. Now, I will admit, I am part of that group of people that did it, and I'm going to show you pictures in a minute of me doing it too. And what do you do once you get to the flowers? So it became this whole festival, and if you Google it, there's music and activities for kids, and they really made it this big thing because every year people do it. And you see the people in the fields not picking the flowers, looking at the flowers. And I just thought it was funny. Look how many, like even though we're in a selfie generation, you see here on the right, someone's taking a selfie, squatting here, more people taking selfies. It's a thing to take a picture of the flowers. And because I said I'm part of the group of people that go to see the flowers, I will show you my picture. In 2019, I went with my friend Alison Bar David to south, to the flowers, and I wore red even to match the flowers because I thought it would come out good in the pictures. And we made salad, we're having a really good picnic. Here's another picture of us, and it's just, we had such a beautiful day just to go see flowers. Now there's other kinds of flowers that you could see as well, but this is like popular, everyone knows this flower name is the Kalanit. So here's where it is, an hour and 42 minutes. Here's Jerusalem, Southern Negev. And it says online exactly where to go, and they even give tips for taking better pictures. So it's really, really part of the culture, and I think it's so great how the country can get excited about something like this and how they give you tips to make it easier. Now this I'm just gonna throw in as a bonus. The red kalaniot are not the only flowers people go to see. This is in the Shvela area near Bet Shemesh, something known as Givat HaTud Musim. It's also when David and Goliath, they had the battle, their battle was in the valley below. This is where the Pelishtim were camped, on this mountaintop hill. And the flowers you see over here are called turmusim. They're the dark purple color. In English, they're called lupine. And they're also protected flowers, and they grow in March and April. So you could literally spend the whole year following flowers. You could do the kalaniyot, and then when the kalaniyot are gone, you could go and you could see the Tudmosim. And also in Israel, most of the flowers, they bloom in the winter. Well, they start in the winter and then in the spring, which is so ironic because in America, when you think of the winter, you think of everything's dead, nothing's growing, snow. And you come to Israel and it's the greenest ever in the winter from all the rain. So it's a really nice thing. I remember what I wanted to say about the red flowers. So I drove with my friend Allison. We drove 2 hours. We had a nice day out of it to go see red flowers. And then I walked 5 minutes out of my house in Jerusalem. This is 2 years ago. I live near this place called Emek Hamatzleva. It's like this park greenery. And there were so many red flowers and the grass was very, very green. I said I drove 2 hours to see flowers. I had to walk 5 minutes and they're actually even brighter and redder than 2 hours. So you could even, if you don't want to drive all the way down far, you can even go close. And we spoke about today, what's the story with picking flowers? There are certain flowers that everyone knows you're not allowed to pick. If someone picks a kalanit, the red flower, and you start walking with it, the other Israelis will scream at you and tell you you are not allowed to pick it. So, you would have to hide it under your coat or something, or hopefully not pick it. There's a lot of national awareness, and the country, Israelis, they tell people what they think. So you pick that flower, you're not getting down the block without getting screamed at. So it's nice that everyone is just enjoying it because you could enjoy the beauty. And that's also something I feel like I'm not used to, because you see something beautiful, you want to take it. My siblings go to my grandma's house. She has a toy there. I want to take it home. I want to take it home. Leave it here so you can play with it and enjoy it here. No, I want to take it home. So to get to go to flowers and just see them and not take them is, I think, a big deal. I want to summarize. So we opened up by saying that there is a huge drop in tourism today, but 2020 was not the only time. We also saw it in 1980. Then we spoke about the International Rose Competition and how Teddy Kollek had the idea to have it in Jerusalem because he wanted to bring back tourism. And it was such a nice, positive way to bring tourism. We spoke about Maurice and Vivian Wall, who gave a beautiful donation to help fund the competition, and their generosity. They funded Rabbi Sachs' paper and just their kindness. Another story I want to tell about them is Maurice would read the newspaper, and sometimes in the newspaper you see appeals, people need kidneys or need different kinds of things. He would go and seek out the people that need help and he would give them money, and he helped many individuals as well as big organizations. Then we spoke in depth about the Flower Project, how it was a way to connect the children of Israel with the children living outside of Israel and connect them to the land, love of the land. And the project actually, not backfired because it was wonderful, but then all of a sudden we want to protect the wildflowers, but we're so used to picking them. So then there was a widely successful campaign that was run primarily through the children in preschool. They were the ones that were the most steadfast about it. And I'm asking myself if the campaign needs to be renewed and maybe we need another national project. Then we spoke about Darom Adom, about the beautiful red flowers, which now are in season. So maybe I will go and take a trip down south to see. We answered all of these questions. And the larger question we asked was, how can we enrich our lives by focusing on beauty? I feel like my life was just enriched the past half hour by putting my mind somewhere else and focusing on flowers and how great they are. And it's like a known statement. What you focus on, your attention on grows. So if we focus on beauty and love and flowers, then that's what's going to be filling our lives. And I want to give you a task. I'm going to do this too. I didn't do it yet, but I will do it. Here's in honor of the flowers we just spoke about. I encourage you to call up a flower shop and have flowers delivered unexpectedly to a friend or family member. They will really appreciate it. Flowers are one of those things that the reason why you're sending them is just to make the person happy, because it's not going to last a long time, and just to let them know that you're thinking of them and to give them bright, colorful on the winter cold day. I think it's a really nice gesture. So as soon as we finish the Zoom, I'm going to think of who I want to send it to and do it as well. So I encourage you to do that. Thank you so much for joining. It's always a pleasure to speak to you about Eretz Yisrael, and I can't wait for next week. If anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer.
That was great, Adele. It made me feel like I'm in Eretz Yisrael again.
Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you, Victoria.
I didn't get the information. Where's the Skivas Hator Mosim? And
It's near Bet Shemesh.
okay.
Google and it tells you where it is. It has another name. It's also called Socha.
And what did you say happened there historically?
So David and Goliath, when they fought in the valley right under Givat Mosim.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Beautiful lecture.
Thank
I
you.
loved it. The flowers. The flowers brought happiness to
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
day. You're welcome.
Thank you. See you next week. That was great.
I'm glad you enjoyed.
Bye.
Bye.